Have you ever felt it? That quiet, creeping sense of fragility. In a world that's supposed to be easier than ever before, we live in an age of unprecedented comfort. With a few taps on a screen, we can summon food, entertainment, transportation, connection. We can curate our lives to minimize friction, to avoid the slightest hint of inconvenience. We've built a fortress of comfort around ourselves, believing it's the same as building a fortress of happiness. But what if the walls of that fortress are not protecting us, but imprisoning us? What if, in our relentless pursuit of ease, we are slowly, systematically, making ourselves weaker? I want to share a story with you, a story about a close friend of mine. She's one of the most resilient people I know, a former officer in the Marine Corps. And she taught me a phrase that completely changed the way I look at challenges, a phrase that sounds harsh to the uninitiated ear. When her unit was faced with a grueling hike, a sleepless night in a freezing foxhole, or a seemingly impossible task, the sergeants wouldn't offer pity. They'd look them dead in the eye and say, "Embrace the suck." My friend told me that back then, as a young officer candidate, she thought it was just a gritty slogan, a piece of motivational shorthand. It took her years to grasp the profound psychological wisdom embedded in those 3 words. It wasn't about being tough for the sake of being tough. It was a lesson in the fundamental nature of human growth. And now, understanding the psychology behind it, I see it as a roadmap to resilience. In our world, a world optimized for comfort, it's a roadmap we need more than ever. Imagine a gardener who loves their roses so much that they build a climate-controlled greenhouse around them. They protect the roses from the wind, the rain, the struggle of pushing through soil, the stress of a cold night or a hot day. The roses might look pristine for a while, but they would lack the hardy strength of their wild counterparts. Their stems would be weak, their roots shallow. The first time a door is left open and a strong gust of wind blows through, they would be the first to break. We are becoming those greenhouse roses. The relentless pursuit of comfort has become a new kind of addiction. We're taught that stress is toxic, that difficulty is a sign to turn back, that the path of least resistance is the path to joy. But the truth is, a life devoid of meaningful struggle is not a better life. It is a smaller life. Every time you shrink away from a challenge, whether it's avoiding a difficult conversation, putting off a project that feels overwhelming, or choosing the couch over a workout, you are sending a powerful message to your brain. The message is, "I can't handle this." And your brain, in its incredible efficiency, believes you. Avoidance doesn't protect your confidence. It erodes it, grain by grain. The more you shield yourself from difficulty, the more fragile you become. Your belief in your own capabilities begins to shrink. Your sense of agency, the feeling that you are the author of your own life, starts to fade. The discomfort you avoided doesn't just vanish. It metastasizes. It returns later, disguised as anxiety, as hesitation, as the gnawing regret for the things you never tried. Like a muscle that goes unused, your capacity for resilience begins to atrophy. Shielding yourself from all discomfort doesn't create safety. It creates fragility. When we stop testing our limits, we stop growing. If this idea of escaping the velvet cage of comfort is already sparking a new perspective for you, take a moment to subscribe to Mind Decode Explained. We journey through these intricate landscapes of the mind together, exploring the tools we need not just to survive, but to truly flourish. Let me take you back to my friend's story. She was 18 years old, drenched in the Southern California sun, in training to become a Marine Corps officer. She often tells me how she hated, with every fiber of her being, the hill sprints. She can still describe it so vividly, the gravel biting into her worn-out boots, the searing fire in her lungs, the taste of copper in her mouth. But worse than the physical pain, she said, was the shame. She wasn't the fastest. She was falling behind. And when you fall behind in a group of Marines, it's a very public, very humbling experience. Every labored breath felt like a failure. Her mind was a deafening chorus of, "I can't do this. Just stop. It's too hard. You're not good enough." The urge to quit, to just step aside and escape the pain and the humiliation, was immense. It felt like a physical force, pulling her to the side of the trail. But then she'd hear it, a shout from a seasoned sergeant running effortlessly beside them. "Don't you dare quit! Embrace the suck!" It wasn't a comforting whisper. It was a demand. And my friend says that in that moment it wasn't a demotivating insult. It was a lifeline. It was a radical reframe. It didn't deny the reality of the pain. It acknowledged it. The suck is real. But the phrase implied something more. You can lean into it. You can use it. It's not just an obstacle. It's the raw material for strength. It was permission to feel the pain, but a command not to be defined by it. So, she kept going. One agonizing step after another. She embraced it. And after what felt like an eternity of those hills, of thousands of push-ups, of rope climbs that tore the skin from her hands, something shifted in her. She wasn't just physically stronger. She felt something she hadn't expected, something far more potent than the absence of pain. She told me it was pride. A deep, quiet, unshakable pride that came not from being the best, but from refusing to quit when it was the easiest thing in the world to do. Her story, it turns out, is a perfect illustration of what happens inside our brains when we choose difficulty over ease. This isn't just philosophy, it's neurology. The magic word is neuroplasticity. For a long time, we believed the adult brain was largely fixed, that by a certain age, our mental hardware was set in stone. But pioneers in neuroscience, like Dr. Michael Merzenich, have shown this to be completely false. Your brain is constantly remodeling itself in response to your experiences, thoughts, and actions. It's not a static circuit board. It's a dynamic, living web of connections that grows and adapts. When you do something easy, something you've done 1,000 times, you're walking a well-trodden neural path. It's efficient, it's comfortable, but it doesn't build anything new. But when you push yourself, when you learn a new skill, solve a hard problem, or endure a difficult situation, like my friend on that hill, you are forcing your brain to create new pathways, to build new bridges. You are literally, physically, changing your brain. Think of it like forging a sword. You start with a raw piece of metal. To transform it into a strong, resilient blade, you can't just polish it. You have to heat it in the fire, the stress. Then you have to hammer it on the anvil challenge. It's a violent, uncomfortable process. But it's this very process of stress and impact that aligns the metal's molecular structure, burning away impurities and creating a blade that is both hard and flexible. A life of pure comfort is like leaving the sword unheated and unhammered. It might be shiny, but it will shatter at the first sign of real pressure. What my friend learned to do was to willingly step into the forge. Deep within your brain, there's a region called the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, or ACC. You can think of the ACC as your brain's difficulty detector, or uh-oh center. It lights up when you make a mistake, when you're faced with conflicting information, or when a task becomes demanding. It's the part of your brain that registers, "This is hard." It works in close partnership with the prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO, which is responsible for executive functions like planning, focus, and self-control. When the ACC sounds the alarm that things are tough, the prefrontal cortex is supposed to step in and say, "Okay, let's focus. Let's figure this out. Let's override the impulse to quit." Here's the crucial part. The more you voluntarily put yourself in situations that activate this circuit, like my friend did on her sprints, the stronger and more efficient it becomes. Doing hard things is like taking your brain to the gym. The first few reps are grueling, but over time, the muscle gets stronger. your brain literally gets better at dealing with difficulty. The connection between the alarm bell and the CEO becomes faster and more robust. What's more, your brain begins to associate the initial feeling of discomfort not with threat, but with effort that leads to reward. This is the neurological basis of grit. This is why her sergeant's advice to embrace the suck was so powerful. She wasn't just enduring for some abstract future glory. In the very moment of struggle, she was actively rewiring her brain to be more resilient, more focused, and more capable of handling the next challenge. The discomfort she felt was the sensation of neuroplasticity in action. It was the feeling of growth. Now, it's essential to address a common and dangerous misconception here, something my friend is always very clear about. Embracing discomfort is not the same as glorifying burnout or enduring toxic situations. This is not about masochism. It is not about staying in an abusive job or a damaging relationship. That is not the suck you should embrace. That is harm you must escape. The key difference lies in two words: purpose and choice. The discomfort that builds us is the struggle we choose in pursuit of a meaningful goal. It's the discomfort of the marathon runner pushing through the last mile, not the chronic pain of an untreated injury. It's the anxiety of giving a presentation for a project you believe in, not the daily dread of a toxic work environment. The Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky gave us a beautiful framework for this, which he called the zone of proximal development. Imagine 3 concentric circles. In the center is your comfort zone. This is where you do things you're already good at. There's no challenge here, and therefore, no growth. The outermost circle is the panic zone. This is where the challenge is so far beyond your current abilities that you're completely overwhelmed. You don't learn here, you just shut down. This leads to trauma and burnout. But in between those two is the magic space, the growth zone. This is where things are difficult, but achievable. It's a challenge that stretches you just beyond your current limits. It's the hill sprint that felt impossible, but my friend managed to finish. It's the musical piece that's just beyond your skill level, but you can master with practice. It's the conversation that scares you, but you know you need to have. This is the sweet spot for growth. This is the suck we are meant to embrace. It requires self-awareness to know the difference between being stretched and being broken. Growth requires a cycle of stress and recovery. Just like in weightlifting, you create micro-tears in the muscle fibers, discomfort. And then you need rest, sleep, and nutrition, recovery, for them to rebuild stronger. Pushing yourself into the panic zone day after day with no recovery is a recipe for disaster, but gently, consistently, and purposefully stepping into your growth zone, that is the recipe for a powerful, resilient, and deeply fulfilling life. The question you should ask yourself is not, how can I avoid all discomfort? But rather, what is a worthy challenge that will stretch me today? This idea is the very heart of what Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset. Dweck's research shows that we generally fall into one of two mindsets. A fixed mindset assumes that our character, intelligence, and creative ability are static givens which we can't change in any meaningful way. When someone with a fixed mindset faces a challenge, their primary goal is to prove themselves, to look smart, to avoid failure at all costs, because they see failure as a direct indictment of their innate ability. So, they stick to their comfort zone. A growth mindset, on the other hand, thrives on challenge and sees failure not as evidence of unintelligence, but as a heartening springboard for growth. The phrase, "embrace the suck," is the unofficial motto of the growth mindset. It reframes a challenge from a verdict into a process. On that hill, my friend's fixed mindset was screaming that her struggle meant she wasn't cut out to be a Marine. It was a verdict on her character. The sergeant's command to embrace the suck was an injection of the growth mindset. It told her, your struggle right now is not the final word. It's part of the process of becoming. Your pain is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're building strength. This simple shift is life-altering. It means that every single difficulty, every setback, every awkward new beginning becomes an opportunity, not a threat. Furthermore, this willingness to step into difficulty is an act of profound vulnerability, a concept researched beautifully by Dr. Brené Brown. Vulnerability isn't weakness. As she defines it, it's uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's that feeling we get when we step into the arena with no guarantee of success. Trying something hard that you might fail at is the definition of vulnerability. Avoiding discomfort is, in essence, avoiding vulnerability. We're trying to engineer a life free from the risk of failure or shame. But in doing so, we also engineer a life free from courage, connection, and growth. Courage requires stepping into the unknown. The pride my friend felt after that run wasn't just about physical endurance. It was the reward for having the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen struggling, to risk being last, and to keep going anyway. When you embrace the suck, you are simultaneously embracing your own vulnerability. You are saying, I might not be perfect at this, I might fail, it might hurt, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because growing is more important than protecting my ego. That is the birthplace of true, deep-seated self-worth. So, how do we bring this philosophy my friend learned in the Marines into the fabric of our daily lives? You don't need to enlist to start building this mental fortitude. The principle is universal. It begins with changing your relationship with discomfort. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to be vanquished, start to see it as a compass pointing you toward growth. The first step, as my friend would say, is to consciously choose your hard things. Look at your life right now. Where have you been choosing comfort over growth? What is the hill you've been avoiding? It might be the application for that job that feels like a stretch. It could be signing up for that public speaking class you've been terrified of. It could be initiating the difficult but necessary conversation to heal a fractured relationship. It could be the blank page of the book you've always wanted to write. Pick one. Choose your suck. Choose a challenge that sits firmly in your growth zone, something that makes your palms sweat a little but doesn't send you into a full-blown panic. Once you've chosen your challenge, reframe the narrative. Your brain will naturally offer you the old story. This is too hard. I'm not ready. I'll probably fail. Your job is to consciously replace that story. When the feeling of struggle arises, and it will, instead of thinking, I hate this feeling, try telling yourself, this is the feeling of my brain building new pathways. This is the feeling of me getting stronger. You could even put a sticky note on your mirror. Embrace the suck. It's a simple, daily reminder to lean in, not to pull away. Then, break it down. The idea of writing a book is terrifying. The idea of writing one page today is manageable. The idea of running a marathon is daunting. The idea of running for 5 more minutes than I did yesterday is doable. Make the discomfort bite-sized. Every day, commit to doing one small, brave thing that nudges you out of your comfort zone. Each small act of courage is a vote for your future, more resilient self. It's a single rep in your mental gym. Finally, and this is something my friend always emphasizes, do not do it alone. One of the most common misinterpretations of embracing the suck is that it's a solitary pursuit. This is a myth. In the Marines, you never embrace the suck alone. You do it with your fire team, your squad. You are surrounded by people going through the same struggle. So, find your fire team. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, who support your growth, who believe in the most courageous version of you. Share your goals with them. Be vulnerable about your struggles. Doing hard things doesn't have to be a lonely journey. In fact, It's far more effective when it's a shared one. The comfortable path promises happiness, but it's a hollow promise. It leads to a life of quiet desperation, a shrinking sense of self, and the bitter taste of what if. Avoiding difficulty erodes your belief in yourself. Choosing to face it, purposefully and with support, builds it. That choice, repeated day after day, is the most powerful act of self-creation you can engage in. The difficult path is not a punishment. It is a privilege. It is the forge where a better version of you is made. Ease will not change you. Difficulty will. So I ask you, inspired by my friend's story, what hard thing will you choose today? What is the challenge you will finally face? And when you feel that familiar urge to retreat, when your mind starts screaming that it's too hard, I want you to remember her story. I want you to take a deep breath, smile, and whisper to yourself, it's time to embrace the suck, because that feeling isn't the beginning of the end. It's the feeling of you in this very moment becoming stronger.